That was footage from Toronto's York University. A Jewish students group had brought speakers from Israel. They were part of the Israel Defense Forces, but it's mandatory conscription there, and some people do their service by traveling around the world, making a good impression for Israel. They were visiting the Jewish students, but that was deemed unacceptable by radical groups at York, which are very numerous. And so what started as a protest turned into almost a mini riot. Fisticuffs broke out, but perhaps more shockingly than just a tussle, chants of "back to the ovens" and other clearly anti-Semitic, I don't know if I would say the phrase threats of violence, but certainly calls for hatred and even death to Jews in general. Joining us now in studio to talk about this is our friend Tarek Fatah, who has written about this mini riot in the Toronto Sun. Tarek, it's great to see you here. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you.
It's been a while since we've seen you. You're always fighting the good fight. I enjoyed your article in the Toronto Sun. What do you think we should make of this tussle? Like student politics, I like rambunctious politics, but did this go too far?
I think what the West is missing in its approach to anti-Semitism is the language. Anti-Semitism has its roots in Europe. The centuries of Christian teaching about Jews, which does not apply in the case of anti-Semitism, if you use the word, that gets generated by, say, people with backgrounds in Pakistan, Iran, or Turkey.
Yeah, obviously there's not a Christian, I mean,
it is religious.
I would say that Christianity, at least that I know in the 21st century, is overwhelmingly pro-Semitic, pro-Jewish.
Well, that's a result of the Second World War.
Right.
That's the outcome, the positive outcome of a sacrifice made by close to 50, 60 million people.
Now, in Pakistan, obviously, that's a country that's more than 90% Muslim.
Yes.
So obviously, they're not being guided by any Christian interpretation. Is that a Muslim hatred?
Yes.
Is it a political hatred? What's the source of it in Pakistan?
Its source is a term called Yahud wa Hanud, the Jew and the Hindu. And the essence of Pakistan's formation was its destiny as guided by Sharia law to wipe out Hinduism from the face of this earth. And of course, we can't do that without eliminating the Jews. And so the whole theory about the resurrection of Jesus Christ coming to Jerusalem, sending an army to destroy all the Christians of Europe, and sending one detachment to India. So this is not a joke.
Really? So how long or how old is the Islamic war against India? Does that go back centuries?
Of course,
Like
seven centuries.
It's that old.
We've been invading India since the year 711, when the Berbers entered Spain at the same time, of which Gibraltar is the name, Jabal al-Tariq, Tariq bin Ziyad, the Berber general who entered Spain and then didn't. In fact, the final liberation, if I would say, of Spain took place in the
1492?
1492. But India's first attack on India was by an Arab general, a 17-year-old guy, who came to get hold of the descendants of the Prophet's family, who found refuge in India.
Wow.
So India as itself also tries to hide this fact, because that is now Pakistan.
So let's bring that back to Toronto in 2019. You know, I learned so much about Islam from you, but also you're big in India. We've shown our folks before that you have television shows in India that have many, many millions of viewers. We can't even imagine. I mean, India is a country of more than 1 billion
Yes.
people, and you speak bluntly about these things.
I simply state that there are two Islams. One is Allah's Islam and the other is Mullah's Islam. We as Muslims have to make a choice.
And Allah, of course, is the Muslim God, and mullahs are like the...
Mullah is the people who generated Sharia law. For example, the Quran doesn't state anywhere that Muhammad slaughtered 700 Jews. There is no Jewish source to that story. But 150 years after Muhammad's death, to generate attack and hatred against Jews, a story was developed that Muhammad himself killed Jews, therefore it is a duty to kill Jews.
I'm not a master of the Quran. I assume that story was in the original work.
No, it's not there. For example, 17 times a day, Muslims go to pray, and a prayer includes Surah Fatiha. This is the first page of the Quran as it is collated today. It wasn't as such in the early days. And it says that God show me the straight path, not the path of those you have rejected or cursed, nor those who have been led astray. This could be pedophiles, this could be murderers, this could be smugglers or wife beaters. You could attach anything to it.
Right.
But 100 years after the Quran was revealed, some guy said, aha, so who are these guys that God has cursed? And of course you had a mullah who said, oh, who else but the Jews? So every Quran today, every sermon in Canada, 17 times a day, addresses and says, show me the right path, not the path on which God you have cursed, or you have showered your wrath on them, who are the Jews. Now, if you cannot combat that, you can't combat Jew hatred as against anti-Semitism.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it was quite shocking to see this scuffle and to have it overlaid with these anti-Semitic phrases. But I looked at political leaders who, if the shoe were on the other foot, I don't even think it's ever happened that there's been an anti-Muslim riot in Canada. I don't think that's ever happened. But if, God forbid, it were to happen, Justin Trudeau, John Tory, Doug Ford, every media that's all they would talk about. Here they quickly, they said, oh, we don't like this, but they wouldn't name the problem. They wouldn't name it, did they?
Of the three, two of them explicitly condemned anti-Semitism, the mayor. However, between Trudeau and Tory is hypocrisy. Because Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau himself, has participated in the prayers in which the Imam has said, oh God, show us the right path, not the path in which Jews have been cursed. And Mayor Tory is guided by the same mullahs who do this. So he has visited mosques, has associated with radical imams. I hosted a show with him, and he would never believe me when I would say, this is disaster, because a religious scholar who's saying that no, he has nothing to do anything wrong with Jews, he's lying, because here's the text. And the call to prayer in City Hall, in the prayers in which Jews are cursed, was done in City Hall,
right,
under the mayorship of his worship, John Tory. So that's why I say both of them are being hypocritical.
Yeah.
You cannot be against anti-Semitism while tolerating it if it came from a non-traditional source. They always focus on anti-Semitism as if it comes from white supremacists or KKK or white nationalists or whatever is the current term for that. They will never, ever, for even dare to say for a minute that called the Imams and said, well, obviously it's not the Quran. Why don't you say explicitly that this doesn't refer to Jews?
You know what, I grew up west of Calgary, and in the 70s and 80s, and I went to a country school. And I remember there were 400 kids in the school. My sister and I were the only two Jews. There were 2 black kids who were adopted, and 2 Chinese kids. And that's it, in a school of 400 country folks. And you would think, oh my God, that must have been terrible. The opposite, Tarek. It was friendly all the time. At most it was, can you explain your holiday?
Yes.
In fact, it made me had to be on my toes, because everyone was always saying, well, what's the Jewish version of this or that? Like I had to know my answers, because I was the only Jew they met. My point is, I never experienced anti-Semitism. Growing up in outside of Calgary, southern Alberta, rednecks, I never saw that. I went to the university in the 80s and early 90s, and it really wasn't that way. This harsh physical, brutal anti-Semitism at
This
York.
is new.
It is new, and it's not old stock Canadians.
No. Let me tell you one thing.
Canada.
Even the Jewish community is not equipped to understand what's happening.
Well, or they refuse to.
I think I would give them benefit of doubt, because there are no courses in Islamic theology in Israel or any Jewish school or at any Jewish university. So what's happening is that Western society evolved after the Second World War as understanding that human civilization can never, ever, ever use race to eliminate a people. It's never again. However, a large segment of the population that was under colonial rule, whether they were Egypt or whether, well, to a certain degree, Turkey at that time was not that bad. Turkey, in fact, during the Caliphate, opened its doors to Jews that were expelled from Spain. This is primarily, and I wouldn't even say Arab, it is coming from the Indian subcontinent, which is the only Muslims who refuse to acknowledge their own heritage. In Iran, everybody celebrates Nowruz, which is a Zoroastrian festival of the New Year. In Turkey, you have Turkish names. You know, as much as I hate Erdogan, he's at least using a Turkish word for his name. In Indonesia, the grandson of the president is called Narendra, which is Indian Prime Minister's name. Everybody's comfortable except Muslims of the Indian Pakistani subcontinent who refuse to ever name their children after Indian names. They take Tamerlane's name, right, the worst killer of all time.
Of all history.
The world population dropped by 3% as a result of that.
Yeah.
You have Tamur as a name.
Yeah, he was one of the Tsarnaev brothers, was named Tamerlane Tsarnaev.
Yeah. Number two, why did my father name me Tarek? And my brother is Mahmoud. Tarek is actually a Sanskrit word, Tarak, which is root word to star, sitara. All these words are Sanskrit words. However, in his mind, Tarek was the man who invaded Spain. So I am Tarek. My brother's name is Mahmoud. That's the guy who butchered India. Wow. So we have a situation where we've created a country of now about 200 million people who have no identity of their own. They've outlawed their own mother tongue and adopted, in a hierarchy of languages, Urdu, considered Islamic, butchered their own people in Bengal and Balochistan, and now are the main suppliers of international terror. And the West can only see Iran in it.
Yeah.
The Iranian people will overthrow the imams.
I hope you're
in
right.
Pakistan, it's going to be the other way around, because the people are indoctrinated into believing that it is a religious duty to eliminate Hindus and obliterate Jews.
Wow. That's very depressing, because I know Pakistan remains a large source of migrants to Canada, and especially to universities. And I mean, I think it's...
Most of the Islamic groups, the NCCM, Pakistani, ICNA, Pakistani, MSA, Pakistani.
These are all the different Muslim lobby groups here in Canada.
In Canada, yeah. Have you ever run into a Turk or a Kurdish fellow or an Iranian against any? No, I was with the Iranian demonstration outside the anti-Mullah rallies that took place at North York at the Mel Lastman Center. 100% of them are sick and tired of the Ayatollahs.
Yeah.
And there was no Muslim organization to support them.
Well, I tell you, you've made me a little bit more depressed.
Don't be depressed.
I am depressed.
No, you cannot be, because the future is ours. That's being a Marxist in me.
Demographically speaking, they're growing. Politically speaking, they're growing. How can the future be ours when it looks like it's theirs?
It's critical mass, reaching critical mass. I've been working on trying to open eyes for the last 50 years. I don't look for results. I believe in the Hindu book, Gita, that says, never have expectations.
I guess you won't be disappointed.
No, I don't have the right to expect any result of what I do. And there are countless people like me doing it. These people in Iran, 400 shot dead. Today in South Iraq, 40 killed in one day. They're giving their lives for this.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We are taking our mayors and prime ministers into mosques and positioning them as holy men. Why would holy men wear long frocks? Why do you have to wear something to look holy? If you're holy, you're holy. You do nice things.
Yeah.
You clear the neighbor's snow. I'd like the mayor's mullahs to clear my snow. Then I'd believe that he's a Muslim. Because my definition of Muslim is someone who clears the neighbor's snow. That's very simple. The rest is all, too medieval for me to follow, because I know that horses don't fly, fires don't speak, and monkeys don't have heads cut off from somebody else. Let people be religious if they want to, they rely to. But we can't bring religion into politics.
Well, you're one of my favorite people, and I love how you fight. I love you fighting hard. You told me as you came in, you just had a big milestone birthday. I couldn't believe when you said
70.
You were 70, because you got the energy of a 50-year-old, that's for sure. You got a fighting spirit, and you got you're a happy warrior.
I am.
They say.
No
which
regrets.
is one of the reasons why we love you. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, there you have it. One of our favorite people, Tarek Fatah, whose column runs in the Toronto Sun, and we're very glad that it does. He's also pretty big in India. His TV show Fatah Ka Fatwa, if I'm saying that right, has absolutely millions of views. In some ways, he's probably the most popular Canadian outside of our own shores. That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show, which is a show I do every day. I do a monologue, interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at premium.rebelnews.com.